So our project was on the effects of anthropogenic pollution on marine mammals in the Pacific Ocean.
And the main question is, how does anthropogenic pollution affect marine mammals in the Pacific Ocean?
So before we begin, we'd like to define the term anthropogenic as anything that comes from a human means. So anthropogenic pollution would be pollution that comes from humans.
Various human pollutants harm marine mammals, but there are three more specifically studied to be the most prominent in its effects. These are chemical, acoustic, and plastic pollution. Chemical pollution affects marine mammals primarily through bioaccumulation and biomagnification, both processes involving the consumption of chemicals like PCBs through the food chain. On the graph to the right, data was collected on various small marine mammals, reporting high concentrations of metals in the kidney in post-mortem examinations. Here we can see the more external physical effects, as oil spills also endanger marine mammals due to the toxicity. Marine mammals can die from inhalation and even contact with oil, specifically when exposed to the sun where the oil is more prone to burning effects.
Acoustic pollution is another form of anthropogenic pollution that has extensive effects on marine mammals. Acoustic pollution includes shipping, underwater construction, and naval exercises. These intense noises can interfere with neurological processes specific to marine mammals, such as echolocation, and some studies have even shown direct links between acoustic pollution and marine mammal death. Pictured on the left is an example of a whale beaching after naval sonar exercises had taken place in the area. Reports concluded that the intense noise caused physiological trauma to the whale and led to bleeding from the ears, likely due to the pressure.
Now, the most alarming form of anthropogenic pollution is plastic pollution. Plastic pollution affects the diets of marine mammals since they tend to mistake plastic as food, as well as their migration patterns changing, all of which emerges from the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which we'll elaborate further on down the line.
Before we continue with plastic, we have to understand why plastic has gotten to the point it's at. And we can see that plastic was originally created in 1907 and was rapidly adopted by multiple countries worldwide. And by the 1950s, there was 150 million tons of plastic pollution in the ocean. Between 1950 and the present day, there's now double that at about 300 million tons of plastic pollution. And of that 300 million tons, 40% of it is just microplastics that cause indigestion. The rest of the 60% are usually larger pieces of plastic that can cause estranglement or entanglement on marine mammals. On the next slide, we can see that, again, 123 species of marine mammals in the ocean. There's about 81 or so that, again, suffer from indigestion from microplastics, and then the rest of them would be the larger effects of estranglement or entanglement that can either injure or end up killing the mammal. On the next slide, we have a chart. This chart started collecting data in the 1950s, but on this graph, it only shows data between 2000 and 2019. This is because the numbers from 2000 to 2019 are so much larger and exponentially grown in contrast to the numbers before 2000, showing an individual breakdown of every country that is producing these plastics that are ending up in the water. So we can again see that plastics is estimated to account for anywhere between half to almost all of the pollution in the ocean at any given time. On the next slide, for a more recent comparison, according to Alan T. Williams from the University of Wales, before COVID-19, plastic would consistently make it onto the list of top 10 most dangerous litter items. And then in between quarantine and lockdown, the amount of plastic that was produced post-COVID has now allowed plastic to be in the top 3 most manufactured items in the world, along with steel and cement.
Going back to the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, as you can see here, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch's topography consists of 2 smaller garbage patches converged into one massive garbage patch that spans over 1.6 million kilometers squared. That's more than twice the size of Texas. And on top of that, it's composed of 99% plastic, which is why plastic pollution is the most prominent form of anthropogenic pollution. And due to the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, marine mammals will suffer the most when it comes to immigration and ingestion, as well as an introduction to new problems to external factors, such as the emergence of invasive species and scavengers also suffering as a result because they might tend to feed off, mainly because they feed off of marine mammals, the deceased marine mammals that may contain uningested plastic in their system.
So looking forward to the future, one of the main things we can touch on in terms of microplastics is bioaccumulation, the buildup of toxins throughout trophic levels. This affects specifically animals of higher trophic levels like whales with the buildup of these things like toxic PBTs. Specific to whales, 2 of the biggest effects we see are the disruptions of endocrine systems and population viability. This is extremely important due to the fact that whales reproduce every 3 to 4 years, so ensuring their repopulation is extremely vital. And when these endocrine systems and the hormones that they regulate are put off, their reproduction cycles are affected, and with also the effect of their population being weaker, it harms the ability for them to reproduce. This is important because not only do whales help regulate their food webs due to the fact that they're the apex predators of their food webs, they also help to sequester carbon at a rate of roughly 33 tons of carbon dioxide per whale, which is the rate roughly equivalent to a few thousand trees.
So now that we've established that plastic is the worst and most devastating form of anthropogenic pollution to marine mammals, we would like to discuss some of the major contributors. Research published by Scientific Reports reveals that 75 to 86% of plastic pollution in the Pacific Ocean comes from discarded fishing equipment. Alongside this, major contributors to plastic within the Great Pacific Garbage Patch include plastic bags, floats, and buoys. Furthermore, the cosmetics industry plays a profound role in the amount of microplastics found in the ocean each year, with an estimated 8,700 tons of microplastics utilized by makeup brands annually. This alarming data has caused increased awareness of the impacts of this pollution, and consequently there's a growing debate of whose responsibility it is to mitigate the pollution that they contribute to the ocean. And this can lead us into our solutions.
So our group tries to go with the pyramid of most effective to least effective solutions, with the bottom being large-scale cleanups like China's 2017 National SOAR program. In 2017, China passed progressive reform to their importation of plastics based on the quality and type of plastic. And while about a year after, it did improve China in the local area in terms of plastic pollution and everything with it, in the larger scale world, it caused backups in their types of plastic because China was the biggest importer. So although China and its surrounding area saw improvements, according to the University of Buffalo, the US specifically saw about a 23% increase of plastic laying dormant in their landfills. And that plastic, since it has now nowhere to go because no country is importing it, just sits there and is inevitably going to be washed away into rivers, and they'll then make their way into the ocean. Above that, we have nonprofit efforts such as the Ocean Cleanup. The Ocean Cleanup was a nonprofit that removed about 17 million tons of plastic in the years it was operational. Although this seems like a decent amount, again, when it's compared to 300 million and in the time it took to do it, it just wasn't very efficient. We also have that the machines that they use to clean up the plastic also broke down very often, requiring money and maintenance. And eventually they ran out of money because not a lot of groups or countries wanted to donate to them, as they wanted to be rather disconnected from the idea that the plastic there is the responsibility of them. And this leads us into our top most effective solution,
which is local initiatives. According to a study done by Catherine Willis of One Earth based in Australia between the years of 2013 and 2019, multiple local coastal communities off the coast of Australia implemented local strategies to reduce their plastic pollution. And these efforts saw large success in a 29% reduction of their plastic pollution. Not only this, but the coastal communities that dissolved these programs saw a subsequent increase in their pollution practices. And the reason we advocate for these solutions are for multiple reasons, one of which being the fact that they are local. We're not trying to establish a large-scale global operation, which gets very political and costs a lot of money, leading into our second point, economics. These local solutions do not require a lot of money to implement, so they are very cost-effective. And so we believe that if these solutions are implemented on a large scale or perhaps globally in specific local communities, this will be the best solution to our plastic pollution problem. And our solution.
All right. Our oral defense questions.
Any of these?
Yep.
Can I ask you to a specific question?
So start with Cameron and it'll work.
All right, Cameron, in the future, what change would you make to your group norms and how would you expect to improve the team presentation?
One change that I would like to make would be an improvement of time management. We tended to have a decent struggle with how we manage our time and how we assign the work to people. Not only that, but our communication methods. We didn't communicate as much as we should have, and I feel like that would have drastically changed the outcome of our presentation.
Thank you. Ryan, how did the group decide to use Robbie's IRR in the overall presentation?
So Robbie's was actually pretty crucial because he used the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. That's a direct cause of the plastic that was being put in the ocean. So it's one thing to just say oh, this plastic is accumulating in the ocean, but it's another thing that Robbie went out and did the research to specifically show that the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is now accumulating and affecting the marine mammals that are living in that ocean because of the plastic pollution that's going in there. So without his, we really wouldn't have had any basis of this is why it's a problem.
Perfect. Robbie, then. Reflecting on your group's work, which one had the greatest impact on your overall understanding of the problem that your group identified?
I think Naya's IRR is what had the most impact on. Well, I'm sorry. Can you repeat it?
So how did it have the most impact on your understanding of the problem you identified?
Yeah, Naya's research from her IRR really had an impact on my, how I viewed ocean anthropogenic pollution but through her ethical lens, of course, and how she really elaborated through her basically her diction on basically. Basically through her I know how I said that basic.
It's okay, take a minute. What about her IRR affected what you understood about the problem?
Well, basically it's basically like a combination of her IRR and my IRR because, well, like Ryan said, I talked about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, but through Naya's ethical lens and her research, it made me kind of give me a sense of like more, like attention to the problem. Like at the beginning, I didn't think that Great Pacific Garbage Patch was like a big problem, and then I started writing about the garbage patch, and then I looked at Naya's IRR, and then looking at hers, it really gave me a sense that Great Pacific Garbage Patch is a much more bigger problem than I at least expected.
Naya, what is the way in which your team's resolution makes you think differently about your own individual research?
So my individual research focused on like the 3 types of pollution that we discussed: chemical, plastic, and acoustic. And so I think that like coming to the conclusion as a group that plastic is the worst made me rethink part of my IRR, because I could have spent more time focusing on plastic and showing how it was such more of a significant problem than the other 2 kinds of pollution that I discussed. But instead I kind of just talked about them equally, when I feel like that would have been more effective in showing the problem.
Okay. All right, and then Mabel, sorry. I don't know why I pronounced it that way. Describe an argument from one of your peers' individual reports that made you think differently about the team's solution or conclusion.
I would say Naya's ethical perspective definitely made me think differently about was it solutions?
Yeah.
Was the solutions, because it's more about targeting specific like brands and corporations versus thinking about it as a more like global thing, because that way you're being more specific in your solutions and you're not having to take such like a broad approach that would be more ineffective and would take a lot more time and resources.
Very good. Thank you.